Okay, I'm gonna tweet out the stream link really quick before I
Yay!
dive into it.
Sounds good. Um, no, if you want to send that to me, I'll also send that over.
Yes, I will do that right now. Okay, stream link sent. Probably got a few people in the chat.
Yay!
I'm gonna ping my Discord server as well.
Awesome.
Twitch stream. Oh, my bot already tweeted out the. Nice.
Boop. Sweet. Got that link.
Excellent.
Boop.
Welcome. Welcome, everyone.
Hey yo. Looks like it's out there. Perfect.
Here we go. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the stream. I'm Jonathan Young, and I'm here with a very special guest. We're doing another completely unscripted little chat, seminar, podcasty thing, whatever you want to call it. I'm here with the charismatic voice. Do you want to introduce yourself to?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Zaroff, is the way you say the last name in case you've been saying it Zaharoff or Zarhoff. It's Zaroff, like with a French Z.
Nice. Love it.
Yeah, with a charismatic voice. Most of you probably know me from YouTube, where I have a channel that analyzes a lot of vocals and music. Sometimes I post my own stuff, which is really fun. And I have a history in opera, so it's extra fun.
Yeah. Man, well, I love your channel.
Thanks.
I've actually had a lot of people who I'm seeing in the Twitch chat who have are linking me your videos all the time.
Thanks, guys.
So I think it might have been my Hellfire video that you.
Yes, it was your Hellfire
reacted to.
video, and it was awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I had
Yeah.
I think the day after you. I think I was actually streaming a lot that week when you put out that video, and I had like a dozen people that were like, "Oh my God, you gotta go and watch this." She reacted to your video.
Yes. That's awesome.
So, yeah. So, I kind of like to start these things off by, especially when I'm talking to singers, I have a couple like kind of general questions that I like to ask when I chat with other singers like this, and then if there's anything specific that you want to talk about, or if you want to open it up for questions at all, there's no plan. There's no roadmap at all. We're just
So we can go back to talking about magic
Yes.
after we talk about
Yes.
singing. Okay, cool. Okay, awesome. Sweet.
yeah. Everybody in chat, Elizabeth mentioned to me that she and her husband just got back into Magic the Gathering, and I have my whole card collection behind me here off screen. But yeah. So the first thing that I like to ask when I chat with other singers like this is I like to ask if you have like any super general, or I guess it doesn't have to be general, but I guess like words of wisdom or tips that you like to always offer singers. And I like to ask this because, and this kind of goes into my next follow-up question, but I think it's fascinating how much more accessible the internet is making education about music stuff, and I think that your channel is a great example of sparking the curiosity and the inspiration of kids who might never otherwise get access to any formal vocal education are becoming interested in this and seeking out resources like your channel to learn about this stuff. So I like to ask, like, if you have any, like, however you want to think about it, like top 5, like the first things that you tell vocalists that are trying to get into it, something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I have some general sayings that I'll pass along, like words of wisdom. Let's see. So, a lot of singing, I think, starts with your breath. And I like to break down singing into three main things. You take a breath, you phonate, and then you shape it in some way. And I like having that sort of breakdown for people when they're really starting to analyze how they sing. I think it's important to think, oh, if I didn't take a good breath, the phonation, the moment when you start creating a pitch with your vocal folds, that's probably not going to go so well. And if those two didn't happen so well, then you don't have the best original sound to shape throughout your vocal tract. So I think breaking it down into those three is a really great place to start if you want to analyze your own singing. But also, I just tell people to take a deep breath and use it, because that's the thing that people seem to forget the most.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
Take a deep breath, use it. I see people sometimes remember to take that breath really well, and then they'll start singing and they won't really be using their air, and maybe they'll use up like a tiny bit of it in a phrase, but not all of it. So they end up doing this thing called stacking, where they end up having like all of this dead air kind of left over. So take a deep breath and use it. I think that one's really good. One of my personal favorite sayings that I come back to over and over has to do with nerves and how much that affects voice, because I've never been one of those people that wasn't nervous. I think that's very, very, very few, right? And I understand how much anxiety can get to your singing and can interfere with somebody delivering a great performance. So I love this saying, my message is more important than my nerves. That has helped me so much, so much. So if you're one of those people that is struggling with those nerves, if you just think about communicating message and what it is you want to give to your audience more, I think that you can say my message is more important than my nerves, and that really helps.
Yeah.
And then, there's tons of them, but the other thing I'd really hit on is SOVT exercises, singing through a straw, semi-occluded vocal tract exercises. These are a huge deal in voice science, and I think have been sort of reshaping some vocal training as well. So if you don't know about that, look up SOVT or look up straw singing and check that out, because that is the best way to develop a lot of efficiency in the vocal folds and I think extend the range without causing a lot of pressure or, potentially causing the voice some harm.
Yeah.
So,
man, it's crazy. Like, I hadn't heard about the straw phonation stuff until like this year, and I've had like 5 singers that I've talked to who are like at the top of their game all tell me that I need to check it out, like in the past like 9 months. It's crazy.
Yep.
So.
Yep. I actually had the awesome opportunity to take a course last summer, sort of like a grad level voice science course with the guy that did the original research that quantified how all of these different exercises create a nice pressure balance, essentially. So his name is Dr. Ingo Titze, and I got to take a course with him, and it was amazing.
Yeah,
so,
that's awesome.
Very nerdy, but really cool.
Well, that's why we're here. That's why we're here, is to talk about that nerdy stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What about you? What do you tell people?
Well, breath, obviously. That's like, I feel like I sometimes like, I have to catch myself and be like, okay, before I say any other tips, make sure you're breathing right. Cause like, it's something that like as professional singers, I feel like it's very easy to take that for granted, but then you kind of remember that like most people aren't used to breathing that way.
Right.
So that's obviously the first one. You covered that. One thing that I've been kind of harping on a lot recently is encouraging people to explore the way that they're shaping their mouth a lot. And
That's cool.
I had this really interesting conversation with a friend of mine, Rashadi B, who a lot of people in the chat, he's a regular on my channel for collaborators. And I've been, Rich is one of the best guitarists on YouTube. He's incredible guitar virtuoso, and I've been trying to push him to sing more. And I had this funny conversation with him. We were chatting on DMing each other. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me talking about this, but we've been doing some sea shanty covers, and and he mentioned to me that he like has no. He doesn't have very much confidence or like awareness about how his voice sounds, but the only time that he feels confident singing is when he's doing like a weird voice or accent. So funny enough, and I think there's something to that, which, you know, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think that in a way that kind of like, I don't know why that like flicked a switch in my brain where like a lot of things made sense suddenly when I heard that from a beginner vocalist, where so much of what I do in my, I guess like if this is more of like an intermediate, like once you've learned how to breathe properly, once you've learned how to phonate properly, I think one step that I see good singers who have made it past the basics really struggle to overcome is like being able to sing outside of like whatever you feel like your bass line is. And that's such a, like, it's the thing that gets me about it is that it's way easier than you would think, and it's basically just like sing with weird voices, you know. And I mentioned this on the last sort of episode of this, when I was speaking with Ken Levine, who has another channel similar to yours.
Yeah, she's awesome.
And Caleb and I do this thing that we call the goblin voice. And whenever we're doing like villain covers or like something that's like really dark, like you know, like whatever 2000s goth rock covers or something like that, I'll be recording him and I'll sometimes be like, okay, Caleb, this take, give me more goblin. And he'll know exactly what I mean, but it's like all it is just shaping your, you know, shaping your vowels and your mouth differently and singing through that. And it's crazy how much that can change the way that your singing voice sounds. And I feel like not many people realize that you can really, you know, a lot of it is like acting. And if you enjoy, you know, slipping into different characters or role playing like Dungeons and Dragons or something like that, I think there's an argument to be made that like, depending on like your what your vocal range is, there's a whole slew of, I guess like characters that you can kind of slip into and sing in completely different styles. And I don't think I ever realized how big of a part of that, like my career has been just like exploring these different, like I have like my villain voice, I have like my trucker rock voice, I have, you know, like I have all these different, yeah, and it's crazy. And thanks to the internet, I'm finally learning what parts of my throat I'm using for those.
Like, whoa, right?
Yeah.
That's fun. Yeah, I feel that Dungeons and Dragons is a great way to bring up people with lots of fun vocal capabilities.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so on that same topic of sort of educating people about vocal stuff, the next thing that I always like to talk about is the internet. Because I feel like this is another thing that kind of gets glazed over sometimes, especially with content creators where we're all just used to it. But I think it's amazing, again, how, like, you know, many people in the chat, this might be their first time being exposed to, you know, a classically trained opera singer ever. And, you know, I think it's... can't be understated how powerful it is that they can access something like this in just 2 clicks on their phone, you know?
Yes.
So, do you have any, like, comments on that or any interesting thoughts about, like, how the internet has kind of opened the doors for you to access this whole generation of kids that are, you know?
Yeah. I think that one of my favorite things about the internet is the way that it allows you at this point to form communities with people that might be extremely different, maybe across the world from you, but you find a similar interest, and suddenly it's allowing people to embrace diversity at the same time as embracing a commonality of some sort. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Love that. I love the way that we've been really deliberate with the channel to focus on that community aspect and make it about people who just love good music and love good singing. And it's amazing how many people really resonate with that. And then you get just a cool community with a great vibe that's super positive. And that's awesome. That's something that can happen online, and you can reach so many more people, and those people can be involved in something that I feel is very grounding for everybody. And I feel that has been just such a wonderful guidepost or anchor for people in the last few years when things have gone through so much change and a lot of people have felt very separated from others. So having that community aspect on the internet has been amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I was actually just talking yesterday with another opera singer that I worked with at one point at Opera Theater St. Louis, and we were chatting about how it's amazing that opera is able to reach more people too. It's always been very niche, and I'm starting to see it through things like TikTok, which is often hitting a younger generation.
Yeah.
And just through more social media, I think it might be one of the ways that opera is able to continue rather than being this niche thing that fussy people go to.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to mention that. Like it's I feel like there's so many niches that are finding a home and finding through the internet, like they would like maybe not survive without it. And because of also like with opera, like, and this goes for like a lot of other things as well, like, like jazz music and classical music, a lot of instruments out there that might not be as popular as a guitar or something. Kind of what you mentioned about like building a community. All of your viewers have direct access, like a direct, there's nothing blocking a viewer from directly supporting you and directly interacting with you. And and it's crazy and almost numbing, like when you stop and think about that, like that's never happened before in these industries. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure for opera, like prior to the internet, like I can't even imagine the amount of like classical training and like, you'd have to buy a ticket in a specific, area that has access to like high-end opera concerts to even see it. So there's like parts of the world that might have just never, ever been exposed to it at all. And now those people can like directly support you, directly talk to you. And I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, this is super cool. There was another reaction analysis channel that is based around tribal people essentially, and they brought me on it and listened to me, and it was so incredible to see people who had never heard opera listening to me singing some opera and having that exposure. It was really, really fun. So exactly what you said. People who've never heard it before suddenly can hear it.
Yeah, it's awesome. And on that topic, I think that one thing that's really cool about the internet and manifested in this Twitch stream is sort of the interaction between niches, which is so cool because you, on your channel, you're reacting to a lot of my favorite bands all the time.
Ooh, sweet.
And like Sabaton and Beast in Black are like two bands that I listen to all the time. Love those guys. And it's cool for me because I without like dating myself too much, when I was growing up, it was like right when the internet had just started. You know, like I remember dial-up, so like
Me too.
yeah, yeah. So you know, like but what I mean when I say that is that like when I was a kid and I wanted to get into rock and metal music, there was a very, very bold black line between metal music and like traditional classical music. Even if many metal musicians were heavily influenced by classical music all the way back to, you know, to the 70s and 80s, there was definitely a certain level of like animosity between those two genres. And I'm sure that you know what I'm talking about. But I mean, without like, you know, getting into that, I love that people like yourself and through like these channels on the internet, it's that kind of wall between those genres is starting to kind of break down. And you're seeing more of these like modern bands where you'll get a classical singer who will join a metal band just for kicks, and it'll be incredible. And you'll get these metal singers that will, or like metal musicians that will like dive into like making metal opera music or like very strictly classical or jazz metal music. And I think that's awesome because, you know, I've always thought that genres were kind of dumb anyway, like, you know? So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that comment.
Yeah.
I do. I feel like good music is good music.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it makes you, if it makes you feel something, then it's good.
Yeah,
It's good.
definitely.
Yeah. You know, I think I've thought a lot about that sort of animosity that you're talking about between classical music, and it's metal, but it wasn't just that. It's some of the contemporary singing techniques, essentially.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it was ill-intended that classical was going, oh, no, don't do that. I think it was that came from people maybe trying to do things with their vocal folds that should really have been done with a different part of constriction in the vocal tract.
Yeah.
And when it's possible, you know, that maybe a classical singer was singing something and they decided, oh, what if I tried to add grit to this? And they did it in the wrong way. Like, you can ruin some things that can go very wrong.
Yeah.
So it's understandable that you get a lot of caution from people that are training the voice for extreme singing in a very different way.
Yeah.
But having gone down and now fully in this metal, do I say bowl?
Yeah.
At this point, I've learned so much and done so much reading also on the research that is available. There's not tons out there, but there is some. And we've also stuck a camera down Will Ramos's throat a few months ago and really got to learn about what it looks like firsthand. And at this point, I understand now that it's totally possible to make extraordinary and extreme sounds in lots of different ways.
Yeah.
And be healthy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I did a stream with Bobby Bass, who is a TikTok bass singer, which is another interesting rabbit hole that I've talked about a lot, is how I feel like bass singers are finally getting their moment to shine because of the internet. Yeah.
I totally agree.
You want to talk about that? Because that's I was gonna just move past that, but you seem like you're very excited about that.
Well, I feel the same.
Yeah.
The bass singers have been overlooked for a while, and especially in the last decade, maybe a couple of decades in pop music, there's tons of singers that have been pushing their voices higher and higher and higher, maybe when that wasn't the ideal place for their voice to sit, especially in contemporary singing.
I was doing
problems.
that.
See?
I was trying to be a tenor for most of the first half of my career.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that doesn't feel good, and it's not good for you.
Yep.
So at this point, I think exactly what you said, people are starting to appreciate the rumble, which is amazing.
Yes. Yeah, it's crazy. It's interesting, like from a cultural perspective, like prior to the internet, like kind of like what we've been talking about, like bass singers, like there were all of these kind of like cultural gatekeepers in a way, where like what was cool in the zeitgeist of music culture was like not really decided directly by the people. It was also decided by like what people had access to. And
Yes.
and you know, record labels would like decide what music would get airtime, and you know, all of these media outlets and trendsetters or whatever. But now with stuff like TikTok and YouTube, like the people are just deciding on their own, regardless of what any record label or media outlet thinks, and they're seeing these bass singers for the first time. And Bobby and I had a crazy chat on Twitch, because like there are these techniques that we don't even know how they work yet, but because of TikTok, all of these different singers around the world who are like specifically bass singers, and instead of trying to push their, you know, mixed voice, vocal acrobatics, Justin Bieber sort of singing upwards, they're trying to push their range downwards with subharmonics and vocal fry and false fold techniques. And Bobby and I had a crazy discussion where we talked about all of that stuff, and through talking with him and some other people, I actually learned that I mean, prior to, you know, a couple of years ago, I was just singing all the time, and I didn't know what any of the techniques I was doing was. But I basically learned that I've been getting really good at using my false folds without knowing that they were false folds. And then through speaking with Bobby, and as I've like learned to do it a lot more healthy, and obviously I'm sure you can speak to how dangerous it is to use your false folds if you don't know exactly what you're doing. But I learned how to do these crazy false fold subharmonics, which is like a technique that like only a couple people on the internet are figuring out how to do, and it's crazy. It feels like a revolution for bass singers, and I'm here for it.
It's super fun.
Yeah.
So usually what's happening when you're using subharmonics is your true folds are going at a rate, and then the false folds are going at exactly half that rate, which drops the pitch an octave, which is really, really cool and crazy to think that our brains and vocal folds can work in that kind of syncing, because that's like lots of times per second.
Yeah.
But two different things at different speeds. That's nuts, super nuts. But yeah, that's happened in folk singing for a while, and like Tuvan throat singing. So there's different pockets of folk music that have had that, but now we have. I really attribute some of the bass craze to Jeff Castellucci.
Yeah.
And he has an amazing video about how to sing low, and he explained that, and or like has talked about how he approaches it, and I think that's very interesting. And all of a sudden we have also these bass voices which are on speakers, and when they get in the speaker, it just shakes the entire room. You like feel the screws coming out of your shelves. It's just so cool. I love it. Oh, that's awesome that that makes sense that you've already been doing that, especially from hearing you.
Yeah.
That makes sense that then you get to play and go further and further and further, which is really cool.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I was explaining this to, you know, a couple different people I've spoken with on stream before, but they're so closely adjacent, like this, like, you know, the Tuvan throat singing technique, the like Russian bass choir technique, and metal singing, that like when I started like workshopping this with Bobby, like Bobby is like one of the most incredible, like well-trained bass singers that I've ever met, and he does the true fold subharmonics because that's like adjacent to like his training classically, but not very many of these TikTok bass singers do the false fold stuff because they've never used their false folds before. So I showed up and started talking with these guys and like, you know, workshopping with Bobby, like how these techniques work. And I haven't yet mastered the true fold subharmonic technique at all, but I can just drop into the false fold sub anytime because I've like using my false folds has just become second nature for me as a metal singer. And it's just crazy to me that like I mean, I'm gushing, but like, you know, it's like for the first time ever, these two worlds of like metal singers and choir singers are like actually really intersecting, and we're just discovering stuff that's, you know, like, oh my God, like we can really use this in the world of choir music, and we can really use choir music in the world of metal music, and it's crazy.
Yeah. It's super awesome. And I get excited too. I've played around with it myself, gotten like a little bit of some subharmonics, but it's crazy that girls can do this too. I used to think it was just guys, and especially as a girl, when I'm doing an a cappella track and I'm trying to layer my voice in 10 billion different ways, one of the main limiting factors of that is how low a female voice can go.
Yeah.
So having access to a little bit of that and, you know, trying to develop that some more, that's a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fun. So do you notice, if I'm just curious for you personally, are you able to access that better at certain times of day, or do you feel like it's related at all to activities you've done?
My range expands the closer it is to the morning. So, well, I guess my range moves up. So, because it's similar to, because you're still phonating a note, and then doubling that with your false folds, it's like I still have to phonate the note. So like if I can hit like a lower note naturally because it's early in the morning or whatever, then I can usually also drop further down. And then the more I talk and the more I wear my voice out, the more constricted my low range becomes as the day goes on.
Yeah, right.
But, yeah.
That's interesting. And what about like with false folds specifically? Do you ever notice, obviously with the true folds, as the day goes on, it tends to raise in pitch. Do you notice any sort of day variation that comes with the false folds?
Not really. The false folds kind of seem like they're just always there. And I really, I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a lot more talk about false folds in the near future because it's like they're dangerous, but like if you know how to moderate yourself and just push it in a little bit, it's actually like a pretty reliable way for me to like, I don't know, this like, don't try this at home, kids, but like, but it's like, it's actually an interesting way for me to kind of stabilize my range. If I know, if I'm, you know, obviously very careful about it, if there's notes that I might have like a shaky tone on because they're right on the high end of my chest voice, if I just push in just a tiny bit of false fold grit into them, I can kind of like lock the pitch in immediately, and it's a lot easier for me to kind of stay in tune. Like it's hard to describe, but it kind of
that's
like
really interesting.
Yeah, and it also like it kind of washes out like any tonal or like vowel shape problems that you might struggle with, especially like if you're recording and you're not necessarily happy with like the tone that you're getting up there. My manager in the chat is telling me that I should try and demonstrate. So for anybody that doesn't know what false folds are they above or below your true folds?
They're above them.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I always mix it up. So your false folds, and stop me if I explain any of this wrong, and I apologize that I'm tangenting about this, but I'm this is very near and dear to my heart. But False folds are when you like, arr. That's your false folds vibrating together when you make a noise like that. And what you can do with that is if you're singing a note, you can push in your false folds and give us some, you can kind of really sound angry and Disney villain like that. So the two ways that I normally use this, some of the people in the chat have heard this before, but the two ways that I use this are to go up, like, yeah, like Metallica type stuff. And that's kind of an example of what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, like if I'm singing up there just with a pure vowel shape, you can hear it's right on the edge of my head voice. But then if I can just immediately push it in, and then the other way that I use it is I drop for the false fold subs. So if you so
just
somebody
so
in the chat,
satisfying to hear that.
somebody in the chat is asking, doesn't it hurt? And the answer is yes, if you're not careful. So I have like kind of a time limit where like I can usually sing like that for about 30 minutes a day, and then if I go further than that, I'm like risking hurting myself. But what I always tell people, I almost forgot. I always tell people before I talk about false folds at all, you have to learn how to sing like normally before you ever touch false folds. Like, don't try doing any of that stuff that I just did unless you're very, very comfortable with your throat, with breathing as a singer, because it is very, very dangerous. So,
That's good advice.
I got lucky to not have any vocal damage with how rebellious of a young singer I was. But yeah.
Right? But a lot of times you just also can't discover things through experimentation.
Yeah.
If you're aware and it starts to hurt a bunch, you should back off, right?
Yeah. If it hurts, stop. That's the golden rule of metal singers.
Yeah. I think a lot of metal singers developed without any sort of pedagogy to follow, because you were experimenting and doing it in a way that was smart.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that brings up a question that I have, unless you seem like you had something to say.
There was one other thing in there that is really fascinating to me. We've studied so much pathology surrounding the true vocal folds, especially because, I think a lot of the study in voice science was more centered originally around classical singing, just clean singing. Then we started to have a little more around contemporary, which started to bring in some other things. But we'll talk about things like impact and the amount of impact that you have in your true folds. They're going very, very fast at a high speed. They're able to go much faster because of the structural anatomy, essentially, that create the true folds. And that's why they're able to create a pitch instead of essentially noise or distortion. So we've looked a lot at the different kinds of pathologies that can come up on the true folds. But I don't know if we've actually looked very much at the pathologies that could come up on false folds. I think that's still a fairly new area of study. And I'm really curious to know, I'd be very curious if somebody does push past that hurting point, what appears on a false fold.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as likely that we would see a nodule appear. I think that's probably more specific to the function of the true vocal folds, but I don't know for sure.
That might honestly be the reason why I don't have vocal damage yet, is because all of the pressure is on my false folds and not on my true folds. Because I'm never actually singing for more than like an hour a day. I'm never going on tour. So, and whenever I'm pushing myself, it's not with the true folds. It's just applying too much grit into that. And there's different levels of, like, it's not just like a switch that I flick on and off. It's like there's varying levels of like you can really push in as much false fold as possible, or you can kind of like you can kind of like ease it in, and especially like in the higher range, like when I demonstrated earlier, like the yeah, like I'm actually kind of going in and out, like with the vibrato on the false folds, and that's less pressure than if I just yeah, you know what I mean? It's like it's a different amount of false fold, and if you know how, and this is what's interesting, and this is what was going to be the next thing that I ask you about, is that I have a little bit of like a choir background, and I learned vibrato before I learned false fold stuff. And
that's probably good.
Yeah, and being able to like use vibrato with false folds lets me kind of like ease off the gas and not like push too far, because it kind of acts as like a I don't know. It acts as like a safety valve for the false folds to be like doing the vibrato like that. So I think it's interesting if you have any thoughts about like the intersection of like how you can take like classical or opera techniques to like temper your metal singing or something like that. But
yeah. Specifically with the vibrato, I think that's really interesting too to hear you say that it helps you essentially to relax and back off a little bit, because vibrato is sometimes a little bit disputed. The kind of vibrato that you're doing, though, is essentially a periodic relaxation of muscles within the vocal tract. And if you're having that periodic relaxation, I could see that if you were holding it straight, there's essentially more tension trying to keep it there, whereas the muscles are moving very fast. If they can essentially loosen sometimes to let a little more ease into the sound, we know that just watching with clean singing, a lot of times you end up getting better overtones in the sound as well, and it's good to have a little bit of relaxation enter when things are moving that fast inside of there. So thinking about that in coordination with the false folds, I would think that it's, in general, it's like there are things all the way around the apparatus, like that are not just intrinsic but extrinsic muscles that can be responsible for vibrato. And if those are relaxing too, that would probably influence a little bit of relaxation overall, including with the false folds.
Well, and also, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the false folds are like vibrating together because you're pushing air through them, and if you're right, like, because it's like you're like constricting them, and then air is passing through. So if you're doing vibrato, I don't know what the word, if you're vibratoing, you know, like if the air is like coming in waves, then so is the false fold vibration, right? Or
well, the false folds, and it's the same thing with any part in the vocal tract when there's a constriction there. That constriction is caused usually by tension that's like, oh, I have a rubber band somewhere.
Yeah.
Where's my rubber band? I love showing up the rubber band because it makes so much more sense. Come here, rubber band. You're in the bottom of my pencil holder. Haha. Okay. Rubber band.
Got it.
So if we take this, and like, especially with the true vocal folds, this is really good because when you're really singing high, they're really tight like this. So you can imagine that as the air is kind of peeking through in there, it's going to be whacking a lot faster.
Yeah.
And it's a similar thing with the false folds, except for the structure of them, it doesn't have as many layers. It's like the makeup is different, so it can't go as fast, essentially. But you essentially will, you constrict them, and then the air goes through, and that can create a self-sustaining oscillation, which is what we're going for, right, with that sound. And you can do that with other areas up and higher in the vocal tract as well. But with vibrato, so there's different kinds of vibratos. Sometimes you'll have some that are more influenced, like a bleeding vibrato that sounds kind of like essentially, sometimes it's called a machine gun vibrato. That is different because you are stopping air and things as it's coming through. But the vibrato that you were doing there, the one that's like, and it's kind of more just like this, that seems to be more occurring as laryngeal bobbing.
Oh, wow.
So that's why there's muscles that are like more here and here that are doing very slightly, but are doing that.
Yeah.
And pulling and releasing, which is fascinating. And there still needs to be a lot more study done on it, but
Yeah.
that seems what's occurring.
That's weird. That's
Right?
crazy. Yeah.
It's really nuts.
Yeah.
So then, like, I would think that the relaxation would come from having other things around the false folds chilling out a little bit every now and then.
Yeah. Man, that's wild. That's exciting.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, I feel so dirty right now.
Yeah.
In
No,
the
that's
best of
awesome.
ways.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. Yeah. So, we got some time left here. Maybe I don't know if you have a hard stopper now. I can probably.
No, but can we talk about this card? Can
Yes.
we please? Like, I've been really wanting to talk about this card. This is like,
Jingataxius. Yes.
this is the most amazing Magic card art and design that I think has come out. Period. And it's in Kamigawa, and you did an album
I did.
with Kamigawa. So
I did.
anyhow, so. Did this card ever influence music that you wrote?
Yes.
Just curious.
And
Yes!
but before we go any further, I just want everybody in the chat to make a note that I didn't do this. This was Elizabeth. I didn't do this. Okay, yeah. So, Jingataxius is a Phyrexian. So he's how much do you know about magic lore? Is this? Am I preaching to the choir here, or do you want to hear his?
I know
his-
some about magic lore, but
Okay.
you know way more than me, and I would really appreciate all of the details surrounding it.
Okay, so thousands of years ago in the magic story, there were these two brothers, Urza and or were they brothers? No, that's Urza and the other guy. I'm mixing up my magic lore. Yawgmoth was this like human mad scientist who had some relation to these other people, but he basically went insane and created this this evil alien race of like cyborg monsters called the Phyrexians, and this was like back in like the 90s. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So Jingataxius is one of the 5 Phyrexian praetors that lord over this hive mind alien race. You ever seen like Star Trek or anything? So yeah, so the Phyrexians are kind of like the Borg in the sense that they're they're like trying to like just like assimilate everything. That's like their master plan is to like bring everyone into their sort of hive mind. Jingataxius is actually a recurring character. There's another card that's very popular in the Commander format, especially that first showed who Jingataxius is, and this card that you have is his first time returning for at least 6 years. So fans are really excited that he's back, and so are the other praetors allegedly in the next coming sets. All of Jingataxius' other evil praetor overlords are also coming back with their own cards. I'm assuming because we got the red one in this upcoming set, and we got the green one in the Viking set. Yeah, so one of the songs that I did on the Kamigawa soundtrack was about how Jingataxius, in his scheming machinations, captures one of the heroes who are called Planeswalkers. And the Planeswalkers are like basically, they're I mean, this is kind of a blunt way to put it, but they're kind of like the Avengers or like the superheroes of the magic world. They all have this superpower where usually like sometimes something traumatizing happens to them and it like awakens their spark, it's called. And their spark allows them to like basically teleport to other planets. So that's how you have like these recurring heroes that come to Kamigawa and all of these other planets, is because they teleport to, they're like the only people who can teleport. And the Phyrexians captured one of these heroes named Tamio and infected her and brought her into the hive mind, and that had never happened before in the history of all of the Magic lore. So that's one of the, in fact, the main song that I sung on the Kamigawa soundtrack was a song about Jin Gitaxias infecting one of the heroes.
I have a hand, an Aaron hand that has another
Tamio
card. And you know what? I'm gonna come grab this card.
Is that Tamio back there?
Oh my gosh!
Your husband knows.
He does.
He knows. Yeah. Yeah, there she is. After she gets infected. I love that your husband was watching and like, I'm gonna grab the Tamio that we pulled.
Right?
Yeah, that's amazing. I love it.
It's so cool because the writing on them is not normal writing. Like, you have alien script. It's insane. Alien script on Magic cards.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so awesome. Like, that design just blows my mind. And then this one also has the etching, and it's just so gorgeous.
So if you really like that Jin Gitaxias card, have you built a commander deck yet?
I am in the process of it.
Okay.
And, because, for those who are watching, I played Magic when I was young, and played that quite a bit with my brother at one point, and then got back into it last fall, and Kirk and I were just playing like normal Magic rules, and then somebody said, "Oh, but Commander's the big thing now." And we're like, "What is this? We like our old rules. What are this Commander thing?"
Yeah.
And so we've been starting to put together Commander decks, and I got like some of the bigger things, and we're like, wait a second, not 4 copies, but just 1 copy. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And suddenly my entire plan for the 4 copies, being able to really maximize on each other is changing. So, yes, in the process of opening actually some Commander cards and building Commander decks. Right
Yeah.
now.
So you can make a commander deck with any legendary creature. So you could make a deck with Jin Gitaxias, and that's a mean card. That's a really good card. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, that's so cool. And I feel that overall the art in Kamigawa for me has just been one of the most wonderful to open packs and look at how this was designed. You were talking about a ninja deck that you made, right,
Yes.
at one point.
Yes. My Yuriko deck that I made specifically to beat Gavin Verhey. So.
Wow.
Yeah, so I have what's great about Commander. Many of the other Magic formats are like competitive formats, like you mentioned, because you have 4 copies of each card. You're optimizing your deck as much as possible to be consistent and do kind of the same thing every game. Because with 4 copies of a card in your deck in any given game, you're very, very likely to see that card if there's 4 copies of it in a 60 card deck, which is good if you're trying to reliably win in the same way every time. But part of what I love about Commander is that you don't get that crutch. So like you kind of, because there's only 1 copy of each card in your deck, every single game that you play is different. And because of that, there's much less of, there's still a competitive scene for Commander, but Commander is a lot more of kind of the Wild West, where in the sense that you will only have as fun playing Commander as the people that you're playing with, because which is great, because Commander is a multiplayer format. It's one of the only multiplayer formats in Magic, which is amazing. But if I show up to the table with a $5,000 deck and it's incredibly, because you could put a bunch of cards into your deck that search for the 1 card that wins you the game, and you could win very quickly that way, if depending on how much money you're willing to spend and whatnot.
Yes.
But you could also just take a bunch of Kamigawa cards and put them together, and that could be your commander deck, and those are going to be vastly different power levels of deck. So part of the fun in Commander is like, this is the deck that I pull out when I'm playing against a professional Magic player and I really need to be able to compete. And when I don't need to do that, I have my dinosaur deck,
Yes.
I have my dinosaur deck, which kind of sucks, but it's just fun because
It's fun,
yeah.
right?
So depending on who I'm playing against, if I'm having a couple drinks and just like eating snacks and playing with some casual Magic friends, I'll pull out my dinosaur deck and just play some big dumb dinosaurs. But if I'm playing against some people that are very very try hard, I'll pull out the ninja deck and but those are very different games. But even though it's the same game, they're both Magic and they're both Commander games. It's kind of self-regulating in that way, where people in the Commander community always say they kind of call it like Rule Zero. You always should have a conversation with the people that you're planning on playing with about how mean are our decks. So, because if you have a deck that you just put together with Kamigawa cards only, and it's all about the art and the flavor, that's gonna, like, you might not have very much fun if if somebody brings a deck that just wins on the first turn of the game without letting you do anything. So. Yeah.
Oh, Kirk has a deck that I absolutely hate like that. That's it puts creatures in the graveyard and then summons them from the graveyard, essentially.
Yes, a black deck.
It's a combo. I think it's black.
Black green?
No, I think it's black blue. It might be black white though, but black blue. And it was there. We had played with some zombie things for a while.
Black zombies is a very common archetype.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it drives me crazy because he can have this huge creature out on like the second turn. I'm just like, well, I'm done. But I'm like over here playing with my squirrels.
That's one of the best ways to play though. And part of the fun with Commander is like, for example, that Jin Gitaxias card, the alien text on it makes it hard to, you kind of have to look up what it does.
You have to look what it does, right?
But
like, how do I know?
But I believe that what that card does is it copies artifact spells. And
need to look that up again.
Yeah, I could look it up as well here.
Right.
Jin Gitaxias Progress Tyrant.
Yep.
Yeah, whenever you cast an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell. So, if you wanted to build a Jin Gitaxias deck, for example, you could like look up. You could kind of go on a scavenger hunt and look at all of this vast history of artifact, instant, and sorcery cards that have been printed in Magic and find the ones that you like the most. And it can kind of be this journey of art exploration to find what cards you want to put into your deck. And that journey would be much shorter if you were building a 60-card deck, because there's 4 copies of each card, so you just look up the best artifact card and put 4 copies of it into your deck. But with Commander, like you can like go to a local store and find one artifact card that you really like and put it into your deck, and you kind of get all these souvenirs, and that's part of, I love building decks. That's like one of my favorite things to do in Commander. But yeah, so it's kind of it's like a scavenger hunt.
Have you been collecting the art cards?
I haven't been collecting them. I have a pile of them somewhere. But yeah. Those are cool. They just started doing those.
Right? They're so pretty.
Yeah.
We have, I think, I want to say it's Modern Horizons. I think that we opened a bunch of those and have almost the entire set. I think we're missing one. I think it's Modern Horizons. And then was sort of debating because I've just loved the Kamigawa art so much. I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I should get an art card set.
What, if you don't mind me asking, what prompted you to open so many boxes of Modern Horizons?
Squirrels. I didn't get Chatterfang, and I'm so mad about it.
Yeah.
Chatterfang is like the squirrel general that...
Oh, yeah. I might have one. I could maybe send you one.
I'll be so jealous.
I can send it to you. I might have one. I'm not using it. I have... let me see.
You know, I think Kirk is probably in chat right now, and he's probably yelling, "Don't send it to her! Don't let her!" Chatterfang is... I think... when we were opening all of those packs, I think one of the things that we did was we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and then we realized that we had played with some of the cards, and I got, I think, every single squirrel card except for Chatterfang. It's just ugh.
If I have it, it would be right here. I might not have it. I didn't open that much Modern Horizons, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think I have one. Dang. Yeah.
The evasive Chatterfang.
Yeah. They're pretty easy to come by though, at like local game stores or something, because most people are getting Modern Horizons cards for the modern staples. Like
like the lands.
The lands, and there's a couple cards in that set that are very, very desirable for the competitive modern format. So, and it's like there's a monkey that Ragavan.
Ragavan. We got 2 Ragavans. We got 2 Ragavans and no Chatterfangs.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. I don't think I'm allowed to mention because I'm doing work for Wizards of the Coast.
Okay.
I don't think I'm allowed to mention the finances of whether or not you can sell individual cards, but Ragavan is Ragavan is a magic card that is very desirable.
Kept inside of a very nice protective carrier.
Yeah, definitely.
That's fun.
Yeah.
It's so much fun to get back into it. It just really is. It's been one of the most fun things that Kirk and I have been doing.
I never would have expected that I would have sat down for this call and that you would want to talk about magic.
Right? Well, I was going back through your things and thinking, cool. Yeah, I've listened to that one. That was good. That was awesome. What? He did a Kamigawa soundtrack album?
Yeah. It's crazy. I'm still in shock that happened, and we're about to release the Streets of New Capenna soundtrack as well, which I produced, which is very, very fun. Jazz music. I get to sing jazz finally.
And wait, okay, did I see correctly? Maybe this was on a different thing. Were you working with Zach Zinger on that too?
That was on the Kamigawa album, yeah.
That was Kamigawa.
Yeah.
And that also crosses from the game worlds, from the game audio side, and I was like, oh, he's so cool. I love that you guys are working together.
Zach is incredible.
Awesome.
Zach is absolutely incredible. He came in clutch for us, and his wife Tomoko. They were our consultants for making sure that our influences from Japanese folk music were legit. So,
cool.
Yeah, it was very, very cool. Fascinating. That's another thing that I could unpack sometime is the how many things we take for granted in Western music, which I'm sure you've speaking about like the some of the people that you've talked to. There's all these different types of music that you can make with different combinations of notes that we just never use.
Right.
Super fun stuff. And Zach has spent his whole life studying that, and it's awesome. Absolutely.
Yeah, he's incredible. A really, really interesting and knowledgeable person.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's funny too because we did that soundtrack together, and I had been so busy. I mixed and produced like half the songs on that soundtrack, and I was singing on some of them as well. And I kept going back and forth with Zach about like putting him on all these different tracks and consulting about like how to make sure that we're composing all these tracks properly. And we put out the album, and Zach sent me a message, and he was like, John, I didn't know that you sang. Because we had just been talking about production stuff for so long, and I didn't have him on any of the songs that I was singing on, and he just didn't, and we had just been like working together so closely, and and he like didn't realize that, like, he just thought I was just like a music producer, and I put out the soundtrack, and he was like, wait, that's John singing. I thought he was producing this. It was just funny. It was fun.
Wow.
Crazy.
That's hilarious. Also, your producer hat is solid.
Thank you.
Right? Yeah, it's really cool to see somebody who's so good in both areas.
For the longest time, I really felt like I was not a singer. You know what I mean? Like for the longest time, I kind of accidentally became a professional singer. But when I started my YouTube channel, it was very much like I'm singing because I have the necessity to sing. But like my main like motivation for this is producing the whole thing. But along the way, I just kept singing and singing and singing, and now that's like what most people know me for, which is a blessing and a curse, because it's like, you know, I love singing, but sometimes, like, even to this day, I'll get like collaborators where like I'll produce a whole track and they like won't realize that, like who played the guitar on this? This is awesome. It's like, no, I did that.
Check.
Yeah, it's funny, but
how many instruments do you play?
I am confident on drums, piano, guitar, and bass.
Wow.
I am not confident on most things that resemble a guitar. I can't play any wind instruments. But yeah.
Like, I'll pick that one up next.
Yeah, we'll see, maybe. But
well, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that does cover a lot of different instruments too, that if you're confident on those ones, there's so many different variations of them that you can bring into a track, especially if you wanted to pull in like a more ethnic feel.
Yeah, definitely.
That's cool.
Yeah, I've been exploring a lot more folk stringed instruments lately because the internet, it took me so long to realize it, but the internet has given me a chance to drop all of my pretenses and just make like ridiculous fantasy music.
Yep.
And it took me so long to be like, oh, I can just like make pirate metal and people are cool with that. So I love it though. I'm so happy that I get to do that. Cause man, it's I probably gotta cut us short here in a couple minutes, but man, it's crazy because I have always been wanting, like, I've always listened to like fantasy inspired like folk music and like movie soundtracks and stuff. I've always been interested in that stuff, and there was always just this stigma about like, oh, I gotta write serious songs about like serious stuff, like love, and you know, like, you know, it's like as a lyricist, like there was the kind of this pressure, like, oh man, like I want to be legit, so I have to write songs about like, you know, emotional stuff, and it has to be like able to be taken seriously. And more recently, it's like, no, I'm just gonna write music about pirates and like dragons. You know, that's
right.
That was the internet's gift to me, was realizing that there's literally no rules and I can just do that.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
Oh.
Yeah, I totally agree that it's amazing. You can really go in whatever direction feels like most authentic to you.
Yeah.
And people support that. It's like we want uniqueness.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like people, like, there were always people that liked that, but you just didn't know that they were there until the internet, you know? It's weird. Mm-hmm. It's cool. But
yay for the internet.
Yeah, bringing us all together. But before we go here, and I'm sure we should do this again sometime, if you're interested.
Would be
fun. And collaborate.
And talk about the next set.
Yeah,
we'll
yes.
be like, oh yeah,
yes.
What about this one?
Definitely. Anytime, hit me up with magic questions. But before we go, I always like to ask people if you have closing thoughts or any kind of lightning round of singing tips or content creator tips before we go.
Well, I will give a content creator tip instead this time, which is get things done. I have so many people ask me, how do I start this channel, or how do I do this and this and this, and I can give tons of advice, but most of the time I see that people aren't just willing to execute and get something done. Even if it's not perfect, you need to start somewhere. And just by doing the thing and getting it done over and over, you're going to get better at it. So when people go back to the first videos I did on my channel, they do not look good. You know?
I know that
I was
feeling.
figuring things out, right?
I know that feeling.
Yeah, exactly. So just get it done. Do something. And then look back at the process and figure out how you can make it better and better and better each time.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's a common problem too. I meet a lot of musicians who they just don't know how to finish something.
Yeah.
And if you don't finish something, you'll never move on to the next thing. You know, I have a couple friends that I work with all the time who they'll just keep going back on the same song idea, and it's just endless. They'll spend like 6 months just getting inside their own head about it. And the fastest that I've ever learned in my life was when I'm forcing myself to just finish. You know?
Yeah, totally. Deadlines are inspirational.
Yeah. Deadlines are amazing. Deadlines are everything. Yeah. Any other last words of advice before we go?
Just, I want to say thank you. It's been really fun talking with you.
Yeah. It's so great talking with you. And I apologize for rambling about about those things that I get excited about.
No.
But, yeah.
I asked you to ramble about them, so thank you very much for rambling.
Well, yeah, this has been awesome. And going to call it quits on the stream here. And
Awesome.
But you guys have been great. Chat, thank you so much for being patient with us as we... I know that there were some questions in the chat. Hold on to your questions, and I'm sure that Elizabeth and I are both available all the time for you to shoot us questions if you have any pressing questions about something that you want answered, because I've been... I try to keep the chat off of the screen now to make sure that I'm not like always looking back and forth. But
I know how that goes.
especially when I'm trying to hold on to a conversation like this. But yeah, there will be a VOD. I'll be probably cutting up some clips of this to keep for whatever. I can send them to you as well.
That would be great. Yeah.
But yeah. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. Where can the chat find you?
thecharismaticvoice.com or just The Charismatic Voice on YouTube. Probably the easiest ways.
Awesome. Everyone go and follow her on YouTube and everywhere else. And thank you guys so much for coming. We'll see you next time.
You.